Welcome back to my channel, everyone. A few weeks ago you saw me unbox my new Amtrak Superliner set, which was one of the Christmas gifts that I bought for myself last year in anticipation of building a new N Gage layout. I'm filming this today on January 23rd, 2021, but I got my little Christmas tree back out. Why? Well, what you see in front of it should offer a clue. Guess what I found today? I went down to the basement. It only took me 15 minutes of rummaging through boxes, but I found my old N Gage stuff. I found several boxes of N Gage cars and engines, and that's going to be the subject of today's video. I'm going to unbox them, and the reason for the Christmas tree is this is going to be, for me, like opening Christmas presents. I've wrapped these up and packaged them pretty well. I haven't seen them in over 14 years. I haven't run most of them since I was a kid. The backstory is this. I had a small N Gage layout as a kid, and as an adult, when I moved into my first apartment, there was no room for a layout. So I brought the trains, left the layout behind. A couple moves later, I bought the benchwork that somebody else had started for their layout and decided not to continue with, and I was going to build my own layout. And I got as far as building a double main line around the perimeter, and then life just took me in different directions, and I had another friend who was very interested in starting a layout, so I sold him the benchwork. I unfortunately also sold all of my building kits, and it's a shame because I had a really nice collection of Main Street buildings, an oil refinery, and a nuclear power plant, which I remember even back then was very difficult to find. It appears from what I found today that I actually removed the track, kept the switches, kept a lot of the electronics, which it was something I did not expect to find. And the great news is I did keep all of my cars and engines. Thankfully, N Gage, even if you're living in a small place, you can still pretty much justify the space that N Gage takes up. So I'm not going to show you all the tracks and accessories other than to say this was kind of rare track back in its day. This is the Atlas N Gage track, and what makes this different than what you typically see is it has the brown ties instead of the black, which I remember it was difficult for me to find, but it was worth it to me because it looks more realistic than the black ties. At some point I believe they discontinued it. I don't know what their current offerings are. I mean, maybe they brought it back, maybe they haven't. The track's not in great shape. Some of the ties are kind of busted up where, I pulled the nails out of the holes. And I'll talk more about the plans for the new layout at the end of this video, but let's get to the unboxing. Other than a few train cars that were easily visible when I opened the lid to the bigger box everything was contained in, I really haven't peeked at this. Some of the cars I remember because they were my favorites as a kid. Others are probably going to be a surprise to me, and I know I bought a lot of new stuff when I had started that layout 20-some years ago, and I don't think I ever had the attachment to that I did to my childhood layout, so I'm probably not remembering a lot of those. So this unboxing is going to be fun. This is why I'm making my analogy to Christmas, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of surprises inside these boxes, and I wanted to share my candid reaction. So I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as I go through my old train stuff. I'm going to start with the ones that were visible on top of the boxes, so to me they were no surprise. The funny thing is the three that I could see right away are ones that I don't really remember having. The first one, and I'm surprised this one's in good shape because it was kind of just thrown loose into a bigger box, is a Penn Central coal car. I don't know why this one was not packed away as carefully as the others, but it seems to have survived okay. Okay, the next two that I could see right away were these Jack Frost hopper cars. And I'd forgotten I had them until I saw them, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I had started collecting these. There's a backstory to the Jack Frost thing too. Around the time I was building this layout, so this gives me a date. It would have been 1997 and 1998. And the story behind Jack Frost, real quick, is that my sister and we got into watching building implosions, and the implosion of the Jack Frost sugar refinery in Philadelphia, which is now the site of the Sugar House Casino, that was the first two implosions we went to. The first was a spectacular failure, the second was a spectacular success. Anyway, it spawned our website, phillyblast.com, and our other YouTube channel, Philly Blast, which I'll leave links to in the description. Anyway, those were the ones that I could readily see when I opened the box. I now have 3 smaller boxes, and we're going to go through these one at a time. This one's obviously only going to have a couple cars in it. And when I opened them, maybe tissues aren't as secure as bubble wrap, but when you're going to move and you have to pack up everything you own, I guess you use what you have. And everything you're going to see from this point on, this has been packed away for 14 years. Maybe longer, but it's at least 14. And we got another coal car. I always had an affinity for coal cars as a kid, and I guess I still do. This one's MKT. I'm drawing a blank what that stands for, but I could swear this came up in somebody else's YouTube video recently. I just can't think of where. So I'll start just staging these on this track as if it's a rail yard. Okay, I've got 2 cars in this next set here. Ooh, these are cool. Kind of don't remember these 2, to be honest. A little bit. I remember this Great Northern one a little bit. I'm not sure if this was one I had as a kid or something I bought as an adult. I really don't remember at this point. And this one's beautiful. My God, blue is my favorite color, particularly Conrail blue. And to the best of my memory, I don't have any Conrail stuff, believe it or not, in N Gage. Actually, I don't think I own Conrail anything. But I've always had an affinity for blue. So this is Grand Trunk Western, the Good Track Road. I honestly don't remember this car at all. Maybe this was one of the newer ones. I really don't know. Okay, and you gotta know I'm gonna like this car, and I also have no recollection of ever owning it before, so I'm thinking these are probably some of the newer cars, because I do remember my childhood ones pretty well, I think. We're gonna find that out. The paint scheme should look familiar. This is the old Reading Railroad, which is now owned by Reading and Northern, which you've seen in plenty of my videos, so I always loved the old green and yellow paint scheme. So this is a pretty cool one. I don't remember this one at all. It has an eagle with the American flag, Share in Freedom by U.S. Savings Bonds. That's pretty cool. Alright, now this one I remember well. And I was hoping that it would be in the boxes, and sure enough it is. It's either the one I owned as a kid, or it's just another one that I bought, but I do remember having one as a kid. So you got the Rock Island, you've got the Rock Island line here. That's a tongue twister. Always loved it as a kid. I don't know why. Just cool name, cool color. And I've got a bundle with 2 more. This is the last of this little box. Okay, this one, I definitely remember this as a kid. In fact, I was thinking about it earlier today. This is a Santa Fe cattle car. And this one I had as a kid, and I seem to remember getting a bunch of trains from, I think it was a cousin. So it's quite possible this car is older than me. I don't even know. Yeah, I'll have to do some research on these cars. I remember having this one, though. I believe it's the only cattle car I own. And the last one in this box. Okay, this isn't one that I would have conjured up thinking about my old trains, but now that I see it, I remember it. It's therm ice, dry ice. I had a lot of weird fascinations as a kid, and ice was one of them for some reason, particularly dry ice. I remember having this, but I don't remember ever seeing a real one. Okay, so the next box I'm going to go through is an old shoebox full of cars. And you can see some of them from the top, but I can see there's a couple layers deep. We'll see what we can find in here. The first 2 are these Carnation milk cars, and there's another kind of longish story about why I was collecting them. This particular one, though, this I do remember being in the batch of cars that somebody had given me as a kid. Like I said, I think it was a cousin, but I can't remember for sure. So I've had this particular one going back to my childhood. I did start buying more of them, and there's probably going to be at least 2, 3, maybe 4 more in this box. The real short version of it is my first kitten, Nerisse, who looks a lot like Danny now, who has interrupted many of my videos. In fact, she's sitting on the chair behind me looking for an opportunity to interrupt. Nerisse used to have a meow that sounded like milk. She used to literally go, "Milk! Milk!" And then she'd jump on me and she'd knead me with her paws and suckle as if, well, I was a mommy cat giving her milk. And so I decided to start a milk train, and I said I would buy a car for her birthday every year. And then I got out of model railroading and stopped buying the cars. But had I continued, I'd have 14 of them. She's no longer with us. It was a long time ago. But I've got Danny, who I'm pretty sure is Nerisse reincarnated. Alright, next up is the first of 2 more coal cars. I don't remember having this one at all, but that's a good segue from talking about my cat, because Danny is a tabby, and the Chessie cat from the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad is also a tabby. And if I ever get a male tabby like that, I'll name it Chessie. I've just, the 2 tabbies that I've had in that color happen to have been females. And I know there was a Chessie family. I should really look up. I don't remember the other cats' names. But I should probably name my next, if I get a female tabby, name them after that. Alright, the next coal car is the one that I am so happy to see again. This was my absolute favorite as a kid. This is a Peabody coal car. And I remember as a kid, I used to hear John Denver singing about Mr. Peabody's coal train in a song. And I happened to look that song up earlier today. I don't know if John Denver was the original singer or if it was somebody else. I've seen it done by a couple other artists. But my childhood memory is John Denver. And I remember I always wanted an entire train of Peabody coal cars. And to my knowledge, I only ever had this one. But I am happy to have it. Alright, now I see a couple of cabooses. And the first one, this is a nice little find for me. Didn't I just say a couple minutes ago I didn't think I had any Conrail stuff? I love it when your memory fades enough that you can surprise yourself with things. Isn't this one a beauty? I absolutely love Conrail blue. I mean, if there was a perfect shade of blue, Conrail blue is it. So here we go, my first Conrail. Maybe we'll find more, I don't know, but I'll be happy even with one. Alright, and the next caboose is Chesapeake and Ohio. I don't remember having this one at all either. It's funny, I remember having a bunch of cabooses, but when I was thinking about them earlier, I couldn't conjure up what a single one of them was. Okay, and the final caboose, which I feel like I should remember and don't, is one of my favorite railroads, the Pennsylvania Railroad. It's nice, beautiful. This is one of the dark reddish brown ones. Alright, next up is one of my absolute favorite cars. I had this one as a kid. This is Railbox. You still see these. Most of the trains I have you're not really going to see on the real rails anymore, but you will see Railbox. Of course, they'll be covered with graffiti. But I remember my dad bringing one of these home for me and one for my sister. Railbox was, I believe, a new thing back then. I seem to remember this coming in around the same time as Conrail. I could be wrong, but this car looks to be in really good shape still, so I'm happy to have it. Alright, we're into another car that I have no recollection of having. This is a Heritage Fund hopper car. I don't know that I've even ever heard of that railroad. It's a nice dark blue, a little bit darker than Conrail blue. Pretty cool. Looks in great shape. Doesn't even look that dusty, so I kind of wonder if this is one of the newer cars I had. Okay, and next up is another hopper car that I don't remember having. This one's even smaller. This is Golden Loaf out of Lake City, Minnesota. I'm drawing a complete blank on this one. I'm even going to have to Google it. Because it's still in the box, I've got to believe this was one of my newer cars. I had worked at a company, in fact, my first drafting job. There was a hobby shop within walking distance of the office, and guess what I did on a lot of my lunch breaks? And even though that price tag's torn off, I'm going to guess that's where that one came from. Okay, this next one is definitely from the mid-90s era. I was working at my first drafting job in Hightstown, New Jersey, and I was doing a lot of work for the oil refineries and chemical plants, so that I had wanted that to be a big component of the layout I was going to build back then. I don't know if this is the hobby shop I used to walk to during lunch break, DKB Railway Supplies. I have no idea if they're still around. I'll have to Google it. I haven't been back to Hightstown in a very long time, probably not since my last day on that job. But this is pretty cool. I always like tanker cars, and this is a pretty nice looking one. And next up are two more tanker cars from my childhood. This was always one of my favorites, Gulf Oil. It's funny, I remember having this car, but I thought it was the lighter blue for some reason. I guess I get that confused with their light blue and orange race cars, but still pretty cool. I do remember having a Golf, just my memory on the color was off. And another tanker car from my childhood, Union Carbide. I vaguely remember this one, not as well. I think as a kid, if it was a company that I understood what it was, like, you know, Quaker State or Gulf, I tended to like those better, where a lot of rail cars back then, they were companies, you know, you knew the name, but you knew nothing about them. And I think my memories of those ones are not as strong. Oh, you're going to love this next one. I feel like I've won the model train lottery today, because look what I got. It's a Conrail diesel locomotive. I have no memory of having this. I actually don't know if this was from my childhood or if this was something I bought for the new layout. I'm thinking this and the caboose had to have been for the new layout, right? Otherwise I would have remembered it. Like I said, I have a better memory from my childhood trains. But man, this just made my day. This is so... It made my day finding the boxes of trains, but this... If there was one thing... Well, I would say if there was two things I could hope for in the box of trains, would be... Top one would be a GG1, which I know I don't have. I really know I don't have one of them. But, man, finding this would have been my next pick, so... This is pretty good. Next up is another engine I have absolutely no recollection of, though this one's a dummy. This is not a powered unit, and it looks pretty beat up, so I'm thinking, and I always took care of my stuff, this had to be one that somebody gave to me. Again, as a kid or an adult, I don't know. It's a nice livery, though, Baltimore and Ohio. It's one of these older F units. I've never seen any of these in action that I can remember. Maybe I did as a kid, I don't know. But, it's still pretty cool, even if it's not a powered unit. That's a good find. And it looks like we got a couple more freight cars in here. This one, again, probably something from the newer layout. This is a Central of Georgia, also from DKB Railroad Supplies. So something I probably bought on my lunch break. I can't think of the significance of the railroad other than... while I was working at that job, I was only there a couple of years, and I only took one vacation, and it happened to be to Georgia. So I probably bought this something as a souvenir. And I'm pretty happy about this one too, given where I live now. It's good old Lehigh Valley Railroad. I've got to believe this was also one of my newer purchases, although again, no recollection of it. Another hopper car, bright red Lehigh Valley. Pretty happy about that. In fact, it's funny, I was just saying to Nick of Nick's Crossing in a comment the other day that I need to get some Lehigh Valley stuff. Now I have it. And this looks to be the last boxcar of this box. Looks like it says Chattahoochee Industrial Railroad. Better buy a damn sight. I don't remember this one at all. Not sure why I bought it. It's pretty cool. Again, it's probably just going in on lunch break and buying stuff. I don't remember these at all. And this one definitely was, again, one of the newer buys. I've always liked Amtrak. You can tell because I just bought a whole set of Amtrak. The new set's the double-decker cars. I'm glad to see I have one of the older, just conventional passenger cars, coach number 6448. Also from DKB Railway Supplies. Alright, now we get to one of my old trains that I was most looking forward to finding. I know I've talked about this in a couple videos before. And there's going to be a couple cars in this train. It was a whole set when I got it as a kid. It's the old Pennsylvania Railroad passenger cars. This one looks to be a mail car. United States Mail Railway Post Office number 1376. And it's funny, every time I've seen those old dark red cars up at Jim Thorpe, it's always reminded me, this was one of my favorite trains as a kid. Somewhere, I believe, in these boxes is a steam engine that I used to pull these with. Let's hope I still have that. It was a little steam engine, not like the bigger 425 that we've been seeing up at Jim Thorpe in my videos. But this is going to be the first of several. We'll see how many of these I have. I think it's... I seem to remember 3 or 4, maybe it's 5. And here we have coach number 2760. Always loved these old coaches. There were still plenty of them in use when I was a kid. I mean, now you only see them for tourist trains, but there were some actually still in use. And this was one of my favorites in the set. Probably was my favorite, the observation car. Never in my life have I ridden on one of the platforms on an observation car, but that's a bucket list item. To ride on one of those, to ride in a caboose, and to ride in one of the newer or even older cars that have the upper deck observation. In fact, Reading and Northern has one of those. Someday I'm going to get on it somehow. This one's number 3520. And that does appear to be all of the Pennsylvania Railroad passenger cars. So it was just a 3-car set. You can see they're pretty big cars, though. Okay, I did a quick rearranging in my impromptu freight yard. Next up are 2 passenger cars. Once again, I don't remember having. Somehow this must go with that Baltimore and Ohio diesel. They look like, you know, similar color scheme. I've got 2 coaches. These seem to have very kind of cheesy, cheap, toy-like plastic trucks. Well, all the trucks are plastic, but they just don't look as real as some of the others. So I'm thinking somebody probably gave this set to me. Car number 7100. That's still pretty cool, though. It looks like I'm going to have a decent number of passenger trains, which is actually going to work out pretty well for the layout that I'm planning, and the other car is also number 7100. Those are going to need some work if I want to run them, because the couplers don't even line up and couple. So whatever brand they were, they're not that good. Okay, and next up we got another diesel I have no recollection of having. Don't you love when you can surprise yourself? I mean, it's kind of nice. It's like going shopping, but I spent the money 14, 15, 20 years ago, not today. This one's Atlantic Coastline, diesel number 107. Kind of looks like that purple Georgia boxcar. I don't remember having any connection to any of this stuff. I mean, they're cool colors, but I wouldn't even say, I mean, I'm more of a blue and green person. I wouldn't even say there was any attraction to the colors, other than it kind of does remind me of the old Erie Lackawanna, which I always liked. It's almost the inverse of that. But hey, cool find. Again, the fact that it's in a box makes me think, yeah, Allied Hobbies. Makes me think that that was a 90s purchase. Alright, next up, got another one that I've been absolutely waiting to find. And I'm going to have to take this one out of the box for you to appreciate. This is my Caddo Reading Railroad SD45. So this is very similar to what they're running up in Jim Thorpe. Alright, this is a beauty. I remember my dad gave this to me for Christmas one year. Caddo is considered one of the top of the line in terms of model railroad stuff. I mean, you'll pay more for them, but I remember this being a really special gift, hence why I've kept it in the box. I ran it a lot when I had that layout back in the 90s. And out of all the trains you're going to see here today that I'm going to show you, this is the most like what I've been filming up in Jim Thorpe. You have the SD50s, the SD40s, and the SD38s. So I'll put that in our temporary freight yard for now. I will box it up later to protect it until I can run it. When I get my layout going again, the first things you're going to see run are probably going to be the Reading and the Conrail, because those are my favorites, plus the steam engine if I can find it. Alright, we're getting to the bottom of this first box, but next up is a childhood favorite. I always loved trolleys, and you know, I used to watch Mr. Rogers as a kid. I think I liked the show because of the trolley, or maybe I like trolleys because of the show, or maybe a little bit of both. But this goes back to my childhood. 3rd Avenue Railway System. I have no idea what city that would have been. But there's 2 units here. This particular one, this one's powered. And this one here is just a dummy that gets pulled behind it. And now it's really like unwrapping Christmas gifts. I've got this one, the last one in this box. It's all wrapped up. And actually, as I turned it, I just got a glimpse of what it is. I do remember buying this one. This was one of my 90s purchases. I think this was actually the first thing I bought for my new layout when I built it back then. This is Amtrak diesel. I always saw the Amtrak trains running through Philly, running up and down the Northeast Corridor. And it's funny, we would watch trains as a kid, usually from Princeton Junction. And, you know, a lot of trains went through there back then, both passenger and freight, but certain ones were special. And the Amtrak Metroliners were one of them. The other, of course, was the GG ones. I'll never forget watching those run. Something I wish I could go back and experience. Okay, we've got one more box to go, and you can see peeking into this, it's a combination of rail cars and some other accessories that I guess I decided to keep. So I know this is getting to be a long video, but if you stuck with me this far, thank you, and let's get through the last box, and then I'll have a total picture of what I've got. So first up in this, you can tell why I bought this. I've got myself a Reading caboose. Don't remember getting this one either. Big Little Railroad Shop in Somerville, New Jersey. I don't even remember the store. It was probably there when I was a kid, but who knows, I probably bought it off eBay as an adult. You can tell I never opened it. The staples getting a little rusty. But, hey, I'm happy to have it. This will go well with the Reading diesel. And now we've got a couple little accessories. I'll have to find a place for these on the new layout. I seem to remember being really fascinated when I found these. I don't know why. They're stacks of crushed cars. I don't know how well you could see that. But you would see these in real life stacked up on flat cars being hauled away after they've been through the crusher. I know I bought these in the 90s. I seem to remember thinking it would be an interesting exercise in trying to paint them. So we'll see what I can come up with on that. And then I have a set of actual, quote, working, as in not crushed, cars. Cast out of pewter. It's an odd combination. It looks like I've got a Porsche, a Citroen, and then a couple old 60s, a big boxy 60s car and a little station wagon. I'm not even sure what that one is. I'm pretty good at identifying cars, and I can't really identify two of them. Okay, so here's what they are. It says right on the sticker, if I would bother to read it. We have a Chevrolet, a Citroen, a Porsche, and a VW Estate, which is European. They always say estate instead of station wagon. And here we go. We got Danny checking out the stash. He knew this had to happen at some point. Say hi, Danny. And then, don't bother the trains. Let's go play elsewhere. That's her way of saying the video's gone on too long. Pay attention to me. Alright, and I know absolutely why I bought this one, even though it's misspelled. This is an N Gage 1985 Camaro. I used to have a 1987 Camaro, so this will be painted blue to match what I had in real life. Okay, and you didn't see it, but I just chased Danny away again. Alright, we only got a couple cars left now. This one I remember having as a kid, and I seem to remember it being unreliable. I don't think it stayed on the tracks very well, and I seem to remember it always wobbling when it ran. But a Freightliner flat car with 2 containers on it. That's something I'm going to want for my new layout. I love intermodal trains. I'm going to have to get myself some cars. Okay, and again, going very far back into my childhood, I have a Burlington diesel. I remember this one. I also remember this one not being particularly reliable. I think this one was given to me as a kid. Okay, and the next diesel is one that I absolutely remember having as a kid. It's my absolute favorite back then. The chassis system. Always loved the bright colors, always loved the cat. This is C&O number 3042. This particular diesel, I probably run this diesel as much as I've run every other train I own combined. I just absolutely love this one. Looks to still be in good condition. Hopefully it still runs. Hopefully they all still run. Okay, next up is another diesel that I remember. This is another Baltimore and Ohio F unit, number 4024. I remember this one well. This was my second favorite after the chassis. Surely leads me to believe that I bought that Conrail one more recently, as I don't remember having that as a kid. But I do remember the chassis. I do remember the B&O. Lots of runtime on this one too. Okay, and with just a couple mystery trains to go, I finally found another one of the ones I've been waiting for the most. This is a little Pennsylvania Railroad steam engine number 7946. Again, one of the earliest trains that I owned in my childhood. Got a lot of use out of this one pulling the Pennsylvania Railroad cars, the passenger cars. I have to be a little careful with this tender. One of the trucks fell off when I took it out of the box, but I got it back on. It's pretty small. Needs a little bit of cleanup. I mean, I'm actually surprised. I packed these away pretty well. They're a little dusty, but not too bad. This one seems to need a little more work than most. It's got some coal in there. Alright, and it looks like I am now down to the last 2 trains in the box. I can feel there's 2 in here. I can't think of anything that I remember having that's missing at this point. I think everything I recall was here. And obviously a whole lot more, so we'll see what these are. Alright, now that I see the first one, I remember it. Another tanker car. Michigan Alkali Company. This one, it's funny, I've never weathered any of my train cars. This one kind of looks like, you know, with the white paint yellowing and all that, and a lot of dust on it, kind of looks weathered. And let's see what the last one in here is. Alright, now that I see this, this is the caboose that I should have remembered. Baltimore and Ohio. Dark blue. So I definitely had this one as a kid. So, and that's the only caboose in all of these that doesn't have the cupola. Alright, so that looks to be it. There's other stuff in the box. I won't bore you with it. It's mostly rail joiners, wiring, tools, a little bit more track. Looks like scrap pieces of track. So, what is my next step? Well, my next step is what I initially said about the layout. I got to clear some room in the basement. I'm either going to put a bigger folding table so that I can set the Amtrak set up and run it. And of course, now that I found these, I can run them as well when I get that track set up. It's going to be a temporary setup. It's either going to be thrown on a new folding table that's big enough, or it's more likely just going to end up on a piece of plywood thrown on some sawhorses. And I need to clear that space and get that anyway, because what I've decided is that I'm going to build my layout upstairs. But before I can build the layout upstairs, the real layout, so to speak, I have to do some renovations to this room to keep Danny and all of her feline friends out of it. And I have a really cool idea on how to do that. I've actually started measuring and designing the plans for it. But the next time you see these trains, hopefully they're going to be running in a temporary space in the basement. I'm not sure which I'm looking forward to more, the beginning of a long journey of building a layout, or just plain old running them. I mean, at this point it's been so long since I ran them, I think I'd be plenty happy just to see them go round and round and round in a circle, even if there's no scenery or buildings or anything. It does not appear that I kept any of the buildings from my old layout. I am disappointed about that. I guess at the time I sold it, it's like so many things you just envision, I'm out of this for good, I'm never getting back in. Thankfully, I kept all of these cool cars and engines and everything. Anyway, if you've watched this far, thank you very much. I'll take some final pictures here and end with a brief slideshow, and hopefully the next time you see these, they'll be running around on the track. Thank you for watching.